Hey guys, it's Red. I wanted to make a video for you to really outline how I fly hunters and the strategy and thought process behind it. For this video, I'm using my level 90 alt account, and I will be using the dragon Nightshade. The reason I'm using Nightshade for this video really comes down to two reasons. The first one is that Nightshade does not have steel essence, which really changes flying strategy and structure entirely. The second reason is that Nightshade is a very common dragon now after the fall season has ended. At level 15, which has been capped since my account was at level 84, has the equivalent power to an expert legendary gold dragon. Fabulous dragon here. So, when we fly hunters, in general, before we look at abilities, we really need to know the strengths and the weaknesses of each class. For the hunter class, our strength is that fast attack power and that high damage. The weakness comes down to the dragon's health. Hunters do not have a lot of health. This makes our complete flying strategy around avoid taking damage. No matter what you're doing, you need to avoid taking as much damage as you can. Basically, that means if you see a level 40 tower and a level 30 tower, you need to get that level 40 tower out of the way first because it is hurting you a lot more. When you're looking at bases for the first time, you have to make sure you're paying attention to the level of the towers around you. When attacking with hunters as well, just remember that you have limited firepower, and that is shown by a bar underneath your health in the right-hand corner of your screen. Let's take a look at the specific abilities Nightshade has. The first one is Invert. Invert is a single cost red spell that'll turn the projectiles of towers back upon them. For the video PG is provided in the demo, this is actually of the spell Reverse Projectiles. You'll notice on the icon on the bottom left of the video, it costs 2 rage. Reverse Projectiles does essentially the same thing as Invert, it just costs more and lasts longer. When you cast Invert or Reverse Projectiles, you want to make sure you cast it at the very last minute right before projectiles hit you. This allows you to use the full effect of the spell and use as much of it as you can. When you're flying, your left hand should always be using the spells, and your right hand should be the part doing the attacking. Personally, I like to use my right pointer finger and my left pointer finger on my iPad, or on my phone I typically use my left thumb and my pointer fingers or fingers on my right hand. You can attack with as many fingers as you want, just be careful to note that the more fingers you use, the faster your firepower is going to go down. So, with Invert, with these towers getting damaged by their own projectiles, that means our right hand should be focused on attacking other towers that are not being damaged by Invert. This would include lightning towers, storm towers, and ice turrets, and red mage towers specifically. Towers that'll have their projectiles fired back at them are cannons and archers, as shown in the video, fire turrets, ballistas, trebuchets, and blue mage towers. Blue mage towers will be reversed back upon themselves. That's a very valuable thing to know. If there is a red mage tower up, you must note that every tower underneath that red umbrella will not be damaged by the invert spell. It'll still keep the projectiles from hitting you, but as soon as they're inverted back, they're just going to hit that red umbrella and completely disappear and not damage the tower. Let's look at the next ability, which is Cloak, one of my personal favorites. Cloak has 2 main uses. The first one you'll see very clearly in the video below is that it stops all projectiles and makes them disappear mid-air as soon as Cloak is cast. The projectiles just disappear, which is wonderful. Always remember that as soon as you attack, Cloak does end and the timer for reset begins. The other great thing about Cloak, and the main use of Cloak I use on Nightshade, is it allows you to build that firepower bar back up. If you just sit there cloaked, you're flying slow, and it allows your firepower to build back up before you attack again. The last spell here is Crumble to Dust. Fabulous spell for Nightshade, which gives him 3 incredibly useful spells, which does not happen every day with dragons anymore. It is a 2-cost red spell. The first time you cast it, as the description shows below, the affected towers deal less damage, and they take more damage from you. Again, this is a 2-cost spell. So you'll notice in the video, the first time they cast it, you'll see the graphics around the towers showing you those towers are taking more damage from you and dealing less. The second time you cast Crumble to Dust on the same affected area, all towers, no matter the level, will completely be destroyed. So we're watching, casting the Crumble to Dust, waiting, and it's going to cast once more. A great thing to note about Crumble to Dust, it is a spell that you can hold ahead of time, meaning once you hit 5 bars of rage, you can press Crumble to Dust, and as long as you don't tap any other tower, your rage bar will then continue to build up again while you're holding that spell ready to cast. So Crumble to Dust is wonderful. The last ability that Nightshade has is Lightning Resist. This is really what tops the board off here with Nightshade. We can avoid taking projectile damage with Invert. We can cloak and avoid all damage entirely. We can use Crumble to Dust to get rid of some pesky high-level towers no matter the level. And now we have Lightning Resist. That means that we can really readily avoid all damage except for that coming from storm towers and ice turrets. Ice turrets, especially because their damage is significantly higher, have just become our prime focus every time we fly a real base. You must pay special attention to ice turrets. Let's fly some bases to see how things go. I have a few bookmarked bases here for XP, and the first one I'm going to fly is the ever-common Scorchy. Scorchy is a traditional base XP base setup. You'll see that there are no mage towers, there are no fire ice turrets. It takes up the entire length, and the levels of the towers are very sporadic. You'll see some level 1s, some level 2s, and you'll also notice that all the lightning towers are separated. When lightning towers are grouped in a bunch of 3, they do have that amplifier to power, so every time they attack, they deal more damage. So this is a fabulous XP base, and also happens to be my max XP. So when we fly this base, we're really going to make sure we focus on taking out non-projectile towers while letting Invert take out those projectiles. Last thing, since the farms and the mills are located all around the base, we're going to use those to slow us down so we can attack further ahead without taking more damage. You'll notice on this first island here that we're going to attack, I'm going to leave that mill, and I'll be able to reach and take out that ballista, that storm, the archer, the lightning, and the trebuchet because that mill will slow me down. Let's fly. So as soon as I see that archer tower fire, I'm going to be using reverse projectiles. Leaving that mill, I'm going to take it down just a little bit. And you'll see it's trying to repair buildings. There are no buildings around it to repair, but it's going to use up all those defense super shots that might otherwise be a nuisance on you. As the mill gets out of screen, we're going to take it down. All right, I have 5 bars of rage, so I'm going to select Crumble to Dust. I'm holding that, and now my rage can build back up. So using that spell here, again, reverse or invert. And I'm going to let that farm just kind of go and try to repair some buildings to get rid of some super shots. Any base that you fly that has those farms and mills are just easy picking. They make it easy for you to build rage. They make it easy for you to slow yourself down. And the whatnot. When it comes to ballistas, it will invert the projectiles just like it is intended to, but it'll deal the traditional ballista poison damage, which means the tower will just kind of creep down a little bit. It's not actually going to be damaged significantly. So those are another tower that you might want to actually focus your attacks on. All right, I'm at 5 rage again. I'm going to select Crumble to Dust so I can hold it. And cast. I'm going to focus on those lightnings there before I take out the archer. And invert in that case wasn't necessarily to damage that low-level archer, but to avoid taking damage from an extra tower as I attacked. I'm at 5 bars of rage again, select Crumble to Dust. You'll notice that I sparingly use Crumble to Dust twice. If I can avoid it, I want to make sure I have as much rage as possible to take out other towers around me. Since this is a relatively easy XP base, makes it easier if I don't use all that rage. Alright, and we are clear with just about all of our health on Nightshade. Again, that's a level 15 capped Nightshade for a level 90 against the XP base Scorchy. Alrighty. We are going to try an XP base that is not set up as a traditional XP base, and that is going to be, here we go. So this one has a few more mage towers. Alright, this is a traditional base setup. Hit me for XP, level 108. This is my max XP again. Notice this does have fire and ice turrets. It has mage towers, and the farms and mills are at the back. So this is a lot more similar to an easy base setup for normal players. So, First things first, we need to look at how we're going to avoid taking the most damage. Our highest level towers are on the long island, which is very typical, including a level 27 ice turret. That ice turret is going to hurt. So I already know by the time I get to Long Island, I need to take out that red mage and use Crumble to Dust twice or at least once so I can take out that ice turret a lot quicker. The rest of the time, I'm going to focus on taking out those mage towers, that blue, red, and blue, to make sure I avoid losing any rage so I can use my spells effectively. Invert is really going to save us in the space and make it significantly easier. So, let's fly and see how it goes. Again, unboosted, not necessary for this base. I love the Lethal Squad avatar there. Alrighty, so I'm going to wait those projectiles to be fired. I'm going to use invert, use the rest of my energy to take out those towers. Take out that red again, so I make sure invert is actually doing damage back to the towers here. And I'm doing so good so far. Alright, that red is coming up, which is the reason I'm not pre-casting Crumble to Dust, because it would be a waste of rage at that point. Okay, I know a red is not around the corner, so I'm pre-casting Crumble to Dust to allow my rage bar to fill up. I'm going to cast to make those lightnings deal a little bit less damage to me, while I focus on taking out that ice, which is what is going to hurt the most. And we are clear through the long. Taking out all the boats. And the last island coming up here. Take out those mage towers. Use some reverse. Use Crumble to Dust since we have the extra rage at the end here, and just take out those farms and mills easily. Oop, misfired a bit, missed a tower. And we are through a traditional setup. Please remember that long bases will be easier. That means you're not going to have quite as high level towers compared to the base level, which makes it a little bit easier. The last base we're going to attack is a very common XP base that some of the bigger players use. Oh, I got the bookmark tab issue. If you run into this where you bookmark tab, you click it, goes away, just click any other screen, exit out of it, and it'll make the bookmark tab able to click again. Load the bookmarks. Alrighty here. Here is a lovely XP base. You'll notice the traditional XP setup, so the mage towers are mostly out of the way, and one island there. So that means we need to look at where we're going to take damage. Storm towers don't typically deal a lot of damage, but when you have 5 of them on an island there with the highest level towers, that might hurt a little bit. So my strategy flying through this is I'm going to take out those red mage towers on the first set of islands. I'm going to use a lot of invert. I'm going to get to this island here, save some rage, take out that archer, let those farms and mills fire upon each other to waste some super shots. Lightning, depending on my rage, I might fire Crumble to Dust once to avoid taking as much damage, but I'm really focusing on the back half since I do have lightning resist. When we come around to this mage island here, I'm going to show you a little trick when coming that comes with flying hunters and all dragons as well. Well, and warriors, I suppose. I'm going to use 2 fingers on that island. My left finger, my pointer finger, is going to be attacking the red mage, and my middle finger is actually going to be tapping the space in between the blue mage towers. With 2 fingers and 2 attacks, or 2 taps, I will be able to take down all 3 towers. I'll talk about a little bit more when we get there. There are certain spots in bases where that occurs. So, this is a level 229 XP base. I am flying as a level 90. My expert, or my level capped 15 Nightshade, unboosted. Let's see how we do. So remember, we need to avoid taking damage, and invert in this case is really going to be our first choice. Take down this red mage as soon as we can so we can avoid losing any rage. I'm not shy about using invert many times. My left hand is hovering over invert, and the moment it ends, I'm pressing invert again. I really need to avoid taking damage. That's the only way we're going to get through these level 30 towers here. So the invert's helping me deal damage back, as well as helping me avoid taking damage. Alright, I do not have a lot of extra rage yet, so that means I'm not going to cast crumble to dust, but I am going to use invert once to avoid taking damage from the archer. I'm going to focus my taps on one farmer male at a time to let the other ones fire off their super shots. And waste some defense super shots. All right, coming up around the corner at extra rage, casting crumble to dust. Selecting these towers up front here, I'm going to cast crumble to dust twice there in the back. And through. So far we're through over half the base, and we just have a little bit of health gone. And that just comes down to remembering to avoid taking as much damage as possible. So 2 fingers, one finger is on that red mage, the other one you can see is in between these blues, and it takes out those towers simultaneously. Alright, and we are clear the mages. Saving out my firepower on the top right there, taking out the red, invert, taking out the next red, my fingers hovering over invert. I'm watching to make sure it falls as soon as possible. Focusing my right taps here on my non-projectile towers. And invert again. And we are through with over half of our life on Carpe. So that is a brief introduction, or not so brief introduction, on how I fly hunters, my strategy when flying, and what I look for in every dragon that I fly. I hope you found this useful, and as always, feel free to ask me any questions as they come up. Bye guys!